There are a lot of indicators suggesting that Call of Duty Black Ops 7 is performing well below the expectation of Activision and Microsoft, as well as below what the series usually produces in terms of commercial performance. And I've already talked ad nauseum about its critical reception not being particularly great across Metacritic, across Steam. It's seeing a mixed review score of 48%. The player base is some of the lowest we've ever seen with a Call of Duty franchise, with Black Ops 7's launch having a peak of, a little over 100,000 players, which compared to the likes of Battlefield 6 is, woefully behind. And even compared to past releases like Black Ops 6, it pales in comparison. So the lack of interest surrounding Black Ops 7 was evident from the outset. And beyond that, we've already seen reports that in regions like Europe, we're seeing Black Ops 7 sales be down 63% over Battlefield 6, and compared to last year's Black Ops 6, over 50% down. In Japan, we're seeing that Black Ops 7 suffered the worst launch in the franchise's 20-year history. And all data suggests that currently there are fewer people playing Call of Duty this year than they have been before. And all that has to do with a combination of a campaign that has been poorly received, that many have found to be incredibly tone-deaf in its direction, combined with inconveniences like an always online campaign that paves the road to lack of certain basic features that cannot be implemented in a game that is always online. You've got people discovering that they straight up included AI-generated artwork, Ghibli art, in their final game as part of some of the assets, and the statement Activision gave really didn't win any favors. And things have been going so rough for Call of Duty Black Ops 7 that the Call of Duty team put out the following blog post where they talked about the future and tried to assure audiences that they're, trying to learn from recent mistakes and happenstances and trying to take in feedback and do better in the future, saying that we also know for some of you, the franchise has not met your expectations fully. We know what you expect, and rest assured we'll deliver and over-deliver on those expectations as we move forward. And the commitments that they made include that they will no longer do back-to-back releases of Modern Warfare or Black Ops games, and they want to ensure that they provide an absolutely unique experience each and every year, and they intend to drive innovation that is meaningful rather than incremental. And the general response to this statement has been, I'll believe it when I see it. Due to the ongoing annualized release schedule of Call of Duty, a lot of people feel as though the developers don't actually have time to innovate meaningfully. It's not a matter of not releasing Modern Warfare series or Black Ops series back to back. It's more about giving developers of whichever series they're working on enough time to ensure that they release the most feature-complete package possible, rather than, factory churning out something out of obligation due to time constraints that force them to essentially repeat the status quo rather than push the boundaries of creativity. Now, it's really rare to see a statement like this from the Call of Duty development team. What this indicated to a lot of people was that sales must be really down. The bottom line must have been severely negatively impacted for them to have to put out a statement like this, because usually if sales are good, if things are performing commercially really well, it doesn't matter how much backlash there is. The real test, I think, is how well it performs in the US, and we haven't had that data up until now, or we don't have exact details on exactly how many units, but we do have some statistics that indicate that Black Ops 7, even in the US, is performing a lot poorly than past entries in the series, including the previous Black Ops entry, Black Ops 6. And for those who don't know, the US market makes up for roughly a third of Call of Duty sales, so it underperforming in the US is a big deal. And right here we have a report from Circana, which is a company that tracks consumer data and does analytics for, video game sales and stuff like that. And Charlie Intel shared data that was reported by Circana that reads as follows. The Call of Duty franchise experienced a double-digit percentage full game dollar sales decline when compared to November of 2024 in the US, per Circana, comparing Black Ops 7's launch to Black Ops 6. Now, double digit could be 10%, it could be 90%, or somewhere in between, but is still pretty substantial. I don't know if it's as much as the way in Europe it was a 50% drop between Black Ops 6 and Black Ops 7. But regardless of what that exact double-digit number is when it comes to how much Black Ops 7 dropped in sales compared to Black Ops 6, it doesn't change the fact that that's still enough of a dent that it will have corporate heads take notice. It really explains why the Call of Duty team felt the need to put out a statement like this where they really want to ensure audiences that they're rethinking things in the future and that they're aiming for certain things in the future where they want to, meet or exceed audiences' expectations, and how, they're not doing back-to-back releases of specific series of Call of Duty games, or how they want to drive innovation that is meaningful and not incremental. Stuff that's all easier said than done under the circumstances in which Activision and, Microsoft and Xbox are making the developers of this series create these games, that annualized release schedule that has become more of a curse than a blessing. Now, we have even more data here that Charlie Intel shared from Circana. We have some charts that indicate how well Black Ops 7 performed compared to games released in the month that game launched in, and then how Black Ops 7 is performing compared to games that have released from January of 2025 to now November of 2025. It should come as no surprise that if you just look at November of 2025, which is the month that Call of Duty Black Ops 7 launched in, that within just this month alone, from November 2nd, 2025 through November 29th, 2025, Black Ops 7 topped the charts. For November 2025 specifically, it was the best-selling game. But the fact that Battlefield 6 came close, despite the fact that that's a game that launched the previous month, really goes to highlight how much better Battlefield 6 overall is performing on a long-term basis. Whereas Call of Duty Black Ops 7, it's more of like, obviously during its launch period, it will have some of the biggest sales numbers, but the drop-off looks to be significant, especially if you look at this chart right here that talks about games performance from January 5th, 2025 through November 29th, 2025. You can see right here that looking at the entire year from January to end of November, Battlefield 6 is the best-selling game of 2025. Now, you could argue that, well, Battlefield 6 technically launched a month earlier than Black Ops 7 did. It's had more time to garner all those sales, and that would be a valid excuse if it weren't for the fact that Black Ops 7 is so far behind Battlefield 6 looking at this chart. Battlefield 6 currently is at number 1 for the entire year, whereas Black Ops 7 is just at number 7, with Black Ops 6 not being too far behind Black Ops 7. And beyond that, as of this particular report, we're seeing Black Ops 7 being beaten by the likes of Monster Hunter Wilds, as well as Borderlands 4. All of this suggests that Black Ops 7 sales are nowhere near what, peak Call of Duty commercial performance usually is at. And the conclusion that this is all ultimately led to is that, according to Matt Piscatella, who is the senior director at Circana, it is highly likely, extremely likely, he said, that Battlefield 6 will finish as the best-selling game of 2025 in the US, surpassing even Call of Duty. And for those who don't know, that's actually pretty historic. Battlefield has never beaten Call of Duty in sales. This is the first time in history that's ever happened that Battlefield has surpassed Call of Duty, which once upon a time was the head honcho, the one to beat when it comes to first-person shooter-type games. The competition was always between Battlefield and Call of Duty, and Call of Duty, regardless of which series was received better that year, would always come out on top. But for the first time here in 2025, Battlefield has trounced Call of Duty. What we're witnessing here is a Call of Duty so poorly received that for the first time, the Call of Duty franchise has been dethroned by the competition in a way that we have never seen before. It feels like people are actually for real fed up this time with Call of Duty's kind of misguided direction when it comes to the identity of the series, as well as just the general lack of innovation, whereas Battlefield 6 is the complete opposite. It's being received incredibly well for the most part. Not to say that its journey has been perfect, but it feels like it really harkened back to the good old days of Battlefield when it comes to like the identity, while also pushing aspects of the gameplay and its feature set forward. There was such a stark contrast in reception, such a huge gap between the positive reception of Battlefield 6 and the negative reception of Black Ops 7, that it ultimately led to Battlefield making history, that it led to Battlefield for the first time holding the crown for the best-selling first-person shooter game of this nature of the year. And not only that, the best-selling game, period, of the year. That's a huge accomplishment that has shown not only the growth of Battlefield, but also the comeback of Battlefield, which, after 2042, people didn't know if this series would come back because that was so disastrous. But it came back so strong that it made Call of Duty's head spin to the point where they put out the statement committing to doing better in the future and engaging in creative practices that will yield meaningful innovation. Now, do we wish it wouldn't have taken Call of Duty getting dethroned for them to, at the very least, express sentiments of attempting to innovate with the series? No, that's not ideal. It would have been nice for them to push that kind of innovation always rather than after competition just outshines you. But as they say, better late than never. And this situation highlights the importance of competition. When you're at the top of the mountain, when you're number one at something, when it feels like, you look above and there's nothing to surpass, it's so easy for complacency to start to take root. And that's what many people feel has happened to the Call of Duty series and Battlefield. Battlefield 6 in particular came in at just the right time where they tried really hard with this game and they really looked at the series and really kind of created a game that has all of what makes Battlefield Battlefield and what people love about that series. And in the same way that Battlefield made this phenomenal comeback with Battlefield 6, especially from 2042, whose failure really kind of kicked their butts into rectifying the series and course correcting and taking that endeavor a lot more seriously. The hope is that the competition that Battlefield now poses for Call of Duty, having for the first time dethroned Call of Duty, will kick the Call of Duty franchise and its development team and its leadership into full gear so that they actually do have to innovate and get creative and find ways to actually be a lot better and make, not just incremental little steps forward, but rather do meaningful innovation that can genuinely drive the series forward so that it too has the potential to make a comeback that is akin to what Battlefield did from 2042 to Battlefield 6. Call of Duty absolutely has that potential, and I really hope that they do. And if it took them getting utterly destroyed by the competition and finally being dethroned for the first time to get there, then I say that is good development. If that's what it takes to light a fire under the asses of those involved with Call of Duty to actually do better and to surpass the competition, if they can finally look up and see something to surpass and that can inspire them to do better, then I say that's a positive development. And I say thank God for competition and thank God that, Call of Duty doesn't have a monopoly on this genre, because otherwise we would never see a message like this, because otherwise there will be no incentive for Activision and its leadership to have the Call of Duty team do better, to give them the conditions to be able to do better, because it's easy money when you have no competition and you can just put out the same slop over and over again, or, not be able to kind of take the time to really guide the series in the proper direction and make meaningful evolutions. I think this right here is the best thing that could have happened to modern day Call of Duty. I think this right here is what will make the competition between Battlefield and Call of Duty really interesting. And what that means is that both of them will be fueled to make sure that it's not outdone by the other. And what that means is we'll genuinely get the best potential effort possible out of both of these franchises that are beloved, that are incredibly popular, but are not immune to complacency. And Black Ops 7, while it took many years for Call of Duty to be dethroned, Black Ops 7 proved that no company is immune to being surpassed if they become too complacent. And what Battlefield 6 has done is essentially kick Call of Duty out of complacency, or hopefully that's what one can hope based on the message that was delivered here that seems to indicate just that. And I hope these are all promises that ultimately can be realized and Call of Duty can be celebrated once more as it used to be. But that's just one man's take, and this is everything you need to know about the current state of Call of Duty and specifically Black Ops 7 and what sales have looked like, not only in Europe and Japan, but in its biggest market, the United States. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on the current state of Call of Duty and what you think the franchise needs to do to be able to, regain its throne back, or to be able to compete with Battlefield and not, fall by the wayside and allow Battlefield to just completely take over this field and completely dominate in it. How they can compete to stay toe-to-toe with Battlefield. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.